Hi, this is Stephanie Miller from The Stephanie Miller Show. Please enjoy this exclusive clip from my show on Political Voices Network. This headline, very suspicious. James Comer pushes new conspiracy theory about the FBI protecting Biden. They just double down with some new ridiculous conspiracy theory, right?
Oh my God, yeah, it's QAnon run amok. Look, let's just be honest about this, and this will be the last thing I say about this, right? When you need to plant the seeds of a conspiracy theory, right? When you need to plant the seeds of disinformation, and I'm looking at you, Jim Jordan, what kind of tool do you need? You need a hoe. So
Ah,
that's what the Russians have turned themselves in, or the Republicans have turned themselves into, the tool for disinformation.
It's a golden shower of treason.
yes.
Thank you, Malcolm, for that.
Republicans are hoes.
I mean, there is useful idiot Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? And we were talking, Malcolm, that we need some real shoutiness from you this morning about, what to expect in terms of Russian, in 2024. What with AI and all of this stuff. We just played a bunch of Dan DeLuce, national security correspondent, talking to Jake Sullivan, about how badly Putin and Netanyahu are going to want Trump reinstalled, right?
Yeah, well, I was listening to Morning Joe this morning, and they were quite sanguine about Netanyahu, not considering the United States in terms of their operations in Gaza, principally because Netanyahu wants Trump back in office,
Right.
and then he would just have another puppet on the string. Let me tell you something. I just spent almost over a month in Israel. Israelis do not like Netanyahu.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for the fact that they had a unified government, they're doing a unity government right now, he would already be gone. I mean, he failed in his basic task of keeping Israeli citizens safe. And now there's a lot of machinations that are playing out.
By the
way, please.
Malcolm, I was just going to say, you remind me that my disgust for Netanyahu is not new. I remember how I felt racist and disrespectful he was toward President Obama. I remember Republicans behind Obama's back invited him to come to the United States Congress to speak against the Iran deal. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Yeah, and in a joint session before Congress.
Yep.
Absolutely. But, Netanyahu really does not reflect the average Israeli. He reflects a coalition of the extremist right wing over there. And, everybody in Israel says that man's done. The problem is you got to give up power to be done, right? So, his days are numbered. But, matching that, setting him aside because, Biden has taken a lot of damage from him. Putin, on the other hand, he feels that he is on the march. He really feels that Russia's star is ascendant. And if you were to look at the arc of the support that they're getting, not just in the Republican Congress, which is just absolutely amazing, bought lock, stock, and barrel. They are the Kremlin caucus, right? The Kremlin crew, as I like to call them, because of one thing and one thing only. Donald Trump said, you will support Russia. I think it was the former Prime Minister of Australia who said this morning on MSNBC. He said, I've been in the room with Putin and Trump, and Trump's insane childlike admiration of Putin.
Yeah.
Right? Like he was a superstar on a Super Bowl team. He says it
Right.
was
He said
literally disgusting.
He's like a freshman meeting the star quarterback. He said,
but he wants to get in his letter sweater.
You retweeted our stem cell, Victor Shee, who said, when Fiona Hill speaks, we must listen. She just slammed Trump and Republicans for spending more time taking pot shots at President Biden rather than actually calling out Russian President Putin and the real threats facing our nation. Chilling. They are un-American. I was just reading a tweet, Malcolm, that of all of Biden's accomplishments, which are many, strengthening, reuniting NATO has really, it tells you how high the stakes are going to be for Putin in this election, right?
Well, yes, the stakes are very high, and the only thing he has left to play is literally the Trump card, right? Putting Trump into office. So there, as you said earlier, what is Moscow going to do? Moscow's going to do everything. 2016 will be a microcosm of the tsunami of bull that is going to come flooding the United States. And I think you're right. They'll use false AI. They'll use, deep fakes. They'll pull every dirty trick there is, including maybe even doing an attempted hacking, which we warned about in 2016, with the intent of making the Republicans insane about election security and election fraud, right? And they may even, do it in such a way that it appears that, Hamas does it or Israel does it or some third party that would just get them nuts, right? And try to get, Joe Biden, a bunch of fake votes or something like that. This will be the worst election. I mean, they said the election of 1860 was bad, right? It was 13 states just opted out. And Lincoln got elected. And then they were angry Lincoln got elected and they weren't even involved. Well, that's what this one's going to be like. So when you see things like 100,000 people, I know you're going to get to it, being uncommitted yesterday, going to the polls and literally writing in uncommitted or free Gaza or whatever it is, even though it was 3% less than what happened to Obama,
right?
People who theoretically were in our camp are now Trump voters by default.
Malcolm, I'm reading my hate tweet that I get every week, and it says, I will no longer support the Stephanie Miller Show of Free Speech TV because she has Malcolm Nance on, who supports genocide. Now, your thoughts about what a good friend I am that I continue to have you on, despite the fact that you are ruining my career.
Well, okay. I wish these guys would just get an effing dictionary. Okay?
Yes.
Let me tell you what genocide was. I spoke at Auschwitz in a conference about a potential coming genocide back in 2019. Rwanda, 1 million people murdered by machetes by one tribe intent on slaughtering every man, woman, and child in the other tribe, and almost did it. That's a genocide. Cambodia, right? The Khmer Rouge, mass murdered almost 1 million people, put them into camps with the intent to kill.
I got it. But Malcolm, it's not that we shouldn't, I think minimize the carnage, of Palestinians as well. That we had a caller that just called in that I thought made a fair point that we're both emotional. You and I don't, and, people on this show don't like getting accused of supporting genocide because clearly we don't. But she said, we get offended when you say we don't care about October 7th or we don't care about Jews or we don't care about hostages. So I think that's why it's such an emotional issue, because people don't want to sort of be talked down to about their emotions about things. And I understand it. I mean, Biden yesterday warned Israel they're going to lose support from around the world if they continue down this incredibly conservative path. Kind of what you just alluded to, Malcolm, about how far right Netanyahu is. I mean, I don't... Yeah. What do we do? I keep asking this question. How do you get Netanyahu to stop building settlements? Do we cut off aid? Like, what do we do exactly?
Well, first things first. All right. Israel is in a war, not a genocide. And if you don't want to listen to me on your show, not you, but listeners, because I deal strictly in pure fact based on experience. All right. And when you come up and you go genocide, I have to push back on that.
Right.
War is a horrible thing. All right. Wars in Syria, 600,000 dead. Sudan, 1 million dead. Iraq, hundreds of thousands dead. You didn't see those wars. Right?
Oh, because I was the first one calling George Bush a war criminal. We didn't even attack the right country. Right. Based on a pack of lies.
My point is this. No one is saying that your emotions that you feel based on what you see are invalid. All right? I'm heartbroken for every child that's killed in Iraq, in Ukraine, in Palestine, in Gaza. Okay? But right now, there's a war going on, and it's a war. It's not a genocide. And if you feel that your listenership, you want to go somewhere and be in a cult like the Trump people because you only want to hear what you want to hear, well, the other day I have these people cheering a poor, mentally ill U.S. Air Force guy who set himself on fire.
Yeah.
And we have people on the pro-Palestinian side encouraging people to set themselves on fire.
Yeah.
This is not normal. So if you feel upset by this, yes, you have touch with your humanity and your emotion, just like I do.
Let me
Okay?
yeah.
But if you're voting on the basis of this and you prefer Trump or you prefer not helping Joe Biden on the basis of this, there will be other horrible things that will happen that will affect your world, and you will regret it.
I just thought it's interesting. This Israeli national security minister criticized Biden. Said instead of giving us his full backing, Biden's busy giving humanitarian aid and fuel, which goes to Hamas. If Trump was in power, the U.S. conduct would be completely different.
I mean, win for losing.
Right.
Trump will let Netanyahu make Gaza into a parking lot, as we keep saying. Here's what the president said.
Here's what Trump would have done. Trump would have allowed him to force march 2.2 million people out of Gaza to the West Bank. That's what Trump would have allowed him to do. This isn't lesser of two evils. It's evil versus rational political thought.
So the president said the path forward with difficulty. Here's the path forward. First of all, there are hostages being held that must be released. If we've got at least a principle and agreement, there will be a ceasefire while that takes place. Ramadan's coming up. There's an agreement by the Israelis that they would not engage in activities during Ramadan as well in order to give us time to get all the hostages out. This gives us time to begin to move in directions that a lot of Arab countries are prepared to move in. For example, Saudi Arabia is ready to recognize Israel, Jordan, Egypt, and 6 other states that have been working with Qatar. I'm sure you saw the president say, his national security advisor says this could be within the week that we have a ceasefire. What's your take on all that?
Well, the Israelis and Hamas have already thrown cold water on that. And those are the two combating parties here. The Qataris also.
Yeah.
It's great to try to be optimistic about these things. It's awesome to try to get a ceasefire. But let me tell you what I advised the Israelis while I was there. That if they don't take over the massive humanitarian mission of feeding and supporting 2.2 million people, reopening the hospitals with floods of equipment, then this story is going to go on for the next 50 years.
Yeah.
Even if they were to do that, they still have a combat mission, which is the elimination of the terrorist group Hamas, which is equal to ISIS. So for those who are upset that they're carrying out that mission, they can walk and chew gum at the same time. There's only one obstacle, and his name's Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yeah, absolutely. Malcolm, before we go, I still got to get your take on I was going to say you can't write this, but you can. Malcolm's written several books that there is an unreliable liar named after a vodka, Smirnoff, that Republicans base their entire and appear to be. I mean, God best Dan Goldman is like calling them out, saying you are, doing Putin's work, interfering in the 2024 election if you keep repeating this obvious admitted Russian disinformation, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the funny thing about it is Republicans just don't care. They don't care how much they damage democracy. They don't care. It's about damaging Joe Biden. If I'm not mistaken, Hunter Biden's testifying today, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is going to be a spectacle. And this is all part of the alleged impeachment inquiry to get Joe Biden impeached so that they can say to Donald Trump, we impeached Joe Biden, your record's not sullied anymore.
Yeah.
But look, it's not about the Russians and what they do and what they've done anymore. It's about the Republican Party willing to destroy American democracy, willing to put a dictator into office, willing to blow up all U.S. foreign policy that's existed since World War II.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid to say, as much as they are enjoying that game, there are many people on our side who are willing to help them inadvertently.
Looking at you, Marianne, and Dean Phillips.
Yeah.
Okay,
I can't
Dan,
believe she's back on the ticket.
there's what do you call it? Dan Goldman tweeted there are too many. First of all, Jim Jordan just put out a lengthy diatribe, including this totally debunked Burisma, all this Russian disinformation, Malcolm. And Dan said there's too many false statements in this fiction novel to address here, but it's shocking that Jim Jordan continues to promote Burisma hoax even after he learned it was falsely peddled by Putin. Legal experts have been warning House Republicans they could be subject to conspiracy charges themselves. The DOJ must investigate whether or not Grassley, Comer, or Jordan knew Smirnoff was spreading Russian disinformation, said Goldman. Our friend Glenn Kirshner said they should be criminally investigated for being part and parcel of a conspiracy to defraud the United States and interfere in our elections. One last one, an attorney said the FBI and Justice Department should prosecute them for conspiracy with Russia to engage in treason.